The modern corporate handbook heavily pushes the romanticized doctrine of universal likability, conditioning you to believe that a surplus of workspace goodwill naturally translates into vertical mobility. This is a fatal strategic error. In the cold math of organizational power, being universally liked does not grant you leverage. It actively liquidates it. When you become the frictionless, agreeable asset who avoids conflict and constantly rescues everyone's timeline, you are no longer respected or viewed as an executive threat. You are simply categorized as a highly convenient corporate utility. True corporate chess is never won through a web of emotional friendships. It is dominated by establishing critical, transactional nodes of dependency. The moment you prioritize being liked over being essential, you willingly surrender your seat at the power table. Welcome to the audit of the alliance trap. The corporate ecosystem operates on cold metrics of power and dependency, yet it routinely tricks ambitious professionals into paying a heavy goodwill tax. When your primary objective within a department is to remain universally liked, you systematically liquidate your hard power. Universal likability requires you to avoid conflict, smooth over institutional errors, and accept unfair compromises just to maintain a frictionless reputation. However, in the high-stakes chess of corporate decision-making, an individual who never pushes back is not respected. They are categorized as a harmless utility. By sacrificing your strategic edge for superficial workplace popularity, you train management to overlook you during high-stakes structural restructuring. True corporate authority requires a calculated degree of intimidation and interdicci. When you eliminate that friction to make everyone comfortable, you effectively remove your own leverage and ensure your permanent containment on the lower rungs of the corporate ladder. Cultivating deep emotional companionship inside the office invariably lands you in the boardroom friend zone. High-level corporate strategy is built entirely on cold calculation, resource allocation, and clinical risk assessment. When executive stakeholders look down into the hierarchy to select new leadership, they are not searching for a friendly companion or an agreeable confidant. They are looking for ruthless, analytical executors who can protect the firm's balance sheet under extreme pressure. If your identity is tied to being the office friend who listens to everyone's complaints and keeps the peace, you disqualify yourself from serious executive consideration. Management views you as someone too emotionally compromised to make the brutal, corrective decisions required at the top, such as firing underperforming assets or restructuring entire departments. Your desire for emotional validation completely blinds you to institutional realities, isolating you from the real circles of power where absolute leverage is wielded. Erasing strategic friction from your professional interactions reduces your individual value to that of a basic, mass-produced commodity. When you constantly nod in agreement during boardroom meetings, eagerly accept every sudden operational pivot, and adjust your personal boundaries to accommodate poor planning, you become entirely predictable. In a competitive corporate hierarchy, predictability kills leverage. Executive leadership does not award vertical promotions to individuals who offer zero resistance. They reward those who challenge current inefficiencies and bring a unique perspective to high-stakes problems. By adopting an attitude of total compliance just to preserve a pleasant working environment, you signal to the institution that your time, expertise, and boundaries are infinitely cheap. You become a highly convenient operational shock absorber, absorbing organizational chaos without ever receiving additional capital or authority. To regain your standing, you must intentionally reintroduce friction, proving that your compliance is an expensive asset that must be actively earned. True institutional authority is never built on popularity. It is forged strictly through the hard math of transactional dependency. Empty workplace popularity is a volatile asset that evaporates the moment a corporate crisis hits or budgets are slashed. Elite operators completely bypass the desire to be popular and focus entirely on embedding themselves into critical operational nodes that the company cannot afford to lose. You must establish a professional monopoly over specialized knowledge, key client relationships, or proprietary workflows, making the entire department mechanically dependent on your daily execution. When you control a choke point in the system's infrastructure, your personal likability becomes completely irrelevant to your job security and vertical trajectory. Leadership is forced to respect your boundaries, grant you unmatched operational autonomy, and meet your financial demands simply because your sudden absence would trigger systemic present failure. Trade superficial workplace affection for unassailable operational leverage. The legacy corporate matrix has masterfully engineered the empathy trap to extract maximum cognitive labor at a minimal cost. When you demonstrate an abundance of workplace kindness, taking on extra assignments to support struggling teammates or working late to save an incompetent manager's deadline, the institution weaponizes that empathy directly against your compensation. They will deliberately frame your exploitation as a noble virtue, labeling you a vital team player or praising your dedication during superficial performance reviews. This emotional manipulation is designed to make you feel guilty for demanding your market worth or enforcing strict professional boundaries. While you are busy emotionally investing in the company's collective well-being, the system quietly pockets your surplus value without offering any genuine vertical advancement or financial equity. Real equity is never distributed based on sentimental contribution or soft compliance. It is captured by those who ruthlessly audit their output and demand exact compensation for every ounce of value delivered. To break the empathy trap, you must decouple your personal morality from your professional transactions. Shifting from an emotionally vulnerable resource to a clinical, high-status sovereign operator who refuses to fund organizational inefficiency with unpaid emotional labor. Command within an organization is never achieved by begging for corporate affection. It is systematically commanded through the deliberate implementation of calibrated respect. When you prioritize being loved or accepted by your peers, you instinctively lower your status, signaling that you value external validation over professional authority. The elite corporate operator understands that affection is fickle, but respect based on unyielding boundaries is a permanent currency. You must establish hard, non-negotiable limits on your cognitive bandwidth, your availability outside standard working hours, and the types of low-status tasks you are willing to execute. Refuse to participate in aimless workplace gossip. Speak with measured precision in every high-stakes briefing, and never apologize for protecting your operational schedule. This calculated detachment instantly alters the power dynamics in the room, forcing your colleagues and executive stakeholders to approach you with caution and deliberate intent rather than casual convenience. When you stop acting as a submissive emotional shock absorber for the department, the institution is forced to recognize you as an independent power center. This calculated scarcity naturally elevates your perceived organizational value, transforming you from an easily replaceable, pleasant utility into a dominant asset whose involvement requires significant leverage and real institutional concessions. You do not need the matrix to like you. You need the matrix to realize that navigating around your boundaries is far too costly, forcing them to negotiate entirely on your terms.